Good morning to you once again. Thank you so much for still being with us here in Morning at NTV. We now step into our Kickstarter conversation regarding forest cover, reversing driving forces against forest cover change, as well as investing in natural restoration. And I know Ugandans in different capacities, in groups and entities, social, gatherings. There's been a lot of push towards tree planting, and we are hoping that that in one way or another is paying up in reversing some of the effects of, dying a tree cover. But anyway, the backbone of it is that trees, forests and woodlands cover about 14% of Uganda's land surface. Now, over the last 30 to 40 years, you do have growth in human population, also adding to corresponding increase in demand for forest products for domestic and industrial use, expansion of agricultural land, illegal settlements and weak forest management capacities, having diversely affected the status of natural forests in Uganda, particularly the biodiversity. Until most recently, little attention had been paid to development of commercial forests, which should have provided alternative forest products and services to relieve the pressure on natural forests and conserve biodiversity. Now, when we look between 2001 and then 2023, we have also lost a lot of tree cover, equivalent to 14% of the tree cover that we have in Uganda, and that is in terms of decreasing. Then, of course, when you look at emissions, that has also gone the other direction. So there's been so many ripple effects of us not being vigilant as far as our natural tree cover is concerned. But we do have the National Forest Authority that is in charge of that, and of course we do have its acting executive director joining us for this conversation, Mr. Stuart Maniraguha. It's very difficult. Allow me to call you Stuart. Good morning to you and welcome to Morning at NTV.
Thank you, Priscilla. Good morning to you and good morning to all of the viewers of NTV.
Okay. In light of the conversation we are going to dive into, first remind us of the mandate of the National Forest Authority.
Thank you so much. National Forest Authority is an agency of government that was established by an act of parliament. And the act is the National Forestry and Tree Planting Act. This was way back in 2003, and NFA started its operations in March 2004, and with the mandate to manage and develop 506 central forest reserves. And these forest reserves are spread across the country with a total area of 1,265,000 hectares. And of course, knowing the importance of forests, we play a very critical role ensuring sustainable utilization of Uganda's forest resources, but also looking at the innovative ways of how we can integrate local communities into the management of these forest reserves, given the fact that the bigger part of our population relies on natural resources for their survival. So we bring in that integration using forests as safety nets for communities that are out there to earn a living and actually a livelihood.
Okay. Yeah. What have been the continuous factors that have led to the decrease of the forest cover?
Of course, the factors that lead to the decrease in forest cover are enormous. But the critical ones here is that we have a population that is growing, and this growing population is really not productive. Therefore, it means that they have to rely on the biomass for survival. We use biomass for cooking, charcoal firewood, which accounts to about 88% of our energy requirement. You have communities, population that is growing and is not involved in any cash economic activities, and they always run to the forest to get survival. So you find that almost total dependence on these forests exert a lot of pressure to them. Then we are also having issues to do with the industrialization You see industries coming up, you have urbanization, cities are coming up. All of these development aspects, in most cases, do not move right with the environment. Then the critical one that we've seen also really very, very key in terms of impacting on the forest resources is agriculture. As the country gains peace across all the borders, everyone now is involved in subsistence agriculture. So areas that were previously woodlands are now being cleared down for purposes of establishing gardens and farms. So all of those directly impact on the forest resources that we have.
Okay, let's first go back to why is it important to actually have natural forest cover for a country like Uganda?
It is very, very important, and I think, Priscilla, as you remember, even in our SST, P5, we would be taught the importance of forests, that the forests are important in rain formation. That one is a known fact, that the natural forests that we have been able to give us all of that climate that we require, rain formation that we require, to be able to support our agricultural sector. So having natural forests gives us a very big guarantee that we are going to be more resilient as a country in terms of agriculture. And we also know that these forests are catchments to our rivers, our lakes. So you will be sure that even surface water will be conserved if you have these natural forests. And therefore you can be able to use it for energy now, hydropower dams, you can do irrigation, you can be able to also supply domestic water to households. You see National Water now doing all of this. When the catchments are not protected, then you'll be sure that all of these are going to suffer. So natural forests are really very, very critical in that line, but also on top of supporting rain formation for agriculture, they are also habitats for pollinators. I think that's an area where people have not taken seriously. If we do not have bees, butterflies as pollinators to help pollinating our crops, then there will not be seeding, and therefore production will not be there. The other importance is that 60% of the tourists we are receiving in this country are nature-based tourists, and the income we are earning from tourism is attributed largely to natural forests. Okay, yeah.
So the things that you have mentioned as critical factors hindering the forest cover, especially in its natural state, either staying as or even remaining as in terms of how much we have. Industrialization is not going to go away. There's now more industrial parks that are coming up, especially in the places that were formerly having good forest cover. Population must grow because government is putting up different initiatives to ensure a healthier population. Most recently, the statistics showed that we now have a longer lifespan as Ugandans. Agriculture, you can't run away from it because it's also the backbone of our country. So it begs the question, if these three cannot go away anytime soon and will not go and are going to be increasing, how do we increase our forest cover in alignment with it?
Thank you, Priscilla. Now that's where we come in with a discussion of sustainable development. Okay. Sustainable development looks at how we develop now without compromising the future. And our future is well assured if the environment is well preserved. So with industrialization, we are saying we will need much more forests if we must have industries for purposes of addressing our carbon footprint. Because the industries are going to emit those dangerous gases, and the only resource that we have that can clean the environment for us are the forests. So as we focus there, then we must have that in mind. As we grow our cities, our industrial parks, we are saying that the best way to manage actually having even cities is having green cities. You've traveled. Most of the towns we go to in the cities are having very green parks, which are actually forests, and they are earning them income. They are also used as important areas for rehabilitation. mental rehabilitation. So we need to be deliberate as a country and create these green spaces to be able to address the issues of mental health, where people can be able to go, even if at a fee, stay in, look at nature, enjoy the songs of the birds, and then rehabilitate and do what they call resetting to the default. And that will be able to help the country grow. Then in terms of population, yes, the growth is high. We have one of the population growth rates. And then our, life expectancy is increasing, which is so good. But the most critical part, which government now is working on, is to having a healthy population, as you indicated, that is productive. We should be able to have a population that is not dependent on natural resources. That's why government is investing in services. They are looking at agro-industrialization, now tourism, all of those, so that everyone can be able to do things that bring in money, not solely depending on these natural resources. So the forests will have to survive if no one is disturbing them. Yeah.
So if, for us not to disturb them, there's something known as commercial forests. But do we have any commercial forests in Uganda? And also, how can you interest government in pushing for commercial forests so that the natural forest cover that we have is not tampered with, or what is remaining of it is not tampered with?
Uganda is a champion in commercial forestry development. I say so because the National Forestry and Tree Planting Act, Section 27, clearly promotes tree planting, where it actually says if you own land, the trees that you grow on your land belong to you. So it's an incentive. You will be able to plant knowing they are your trees. Now, the 2001 forest policy, which we revised, was deliberate, having policy statements on commercial forestry. And then when we move along those policy lines, we create incentives as government to be able to promote this. And through National Forestry Authority, we were able to develop what we call the plantation development policy, that will be able to look at how can we bring commercial forestry into play. So we were able to analyze the needs of this country and projected them up to actually 2030. That was in 2005. And we were able to see that we need about 1.5 million tons of timber that are relating to equivalent to 7,000 hectares annually that would be required for us to get enough timber for domestic and get the surplus for foreign market. And for that matter, we realized that the best way to do this would be government to start it. And we were able to start commercial tree planting through what we are calling licensing in central forest reserves, identifying the forest reserves that are meant for production. And we make sure that they actually produce the products that we require. So we put aside 250,000 hectares as a model in forest reserves that could be accessed by Ugandans for purposes of developing commercial forestry. No one in this region has done that. All of the countries are coming to benchmark with us to see how this is being done. So we are seeing reduced pressure on natural forests because we already now have products that we can use to substitute the natural forest wood products. If you went to most of the timber markets around Kampala, you will see that there is a lot of commercial exotic species timber compared to what it was then in 2000, where you would see mahogany and musizis and mivures all scattered. So we are changing the narrative and also making sure that we are able now to grow the forest industry to be able to create jobs and also increase the forest contribution to the GDP. We are now at about 4% contribution to the GDP, but now with the commercial forestry growth, with the factories that are coming up to process timber and give us timber-based products, then we are looking at sustained now forest-based industries that are now going to directly support the conservation of the natural forests because of the alternatives provided by commercial forestry.
Okay. Most recently, there's been a challenge of charcoal. Presidential directive had to be put in place in order to manage the situation. But all this comes down to, natural forests from which locals are actually cutting down trees, burning them and converting them into another source of energy that is also important to communities most especially. And then by and large it has become a very interesting trade, lucrative trade for that matter. It begs the question, as an authority, what role and part have you played in ensuring that some of these illicit trades actually come to an end?
Yes, charcoal production in the country is to a larger extent being done in woodland forests that are now claiming the natural woodland species. And of late, we have seen that, activity being done more in the Acholi and the Lango sub-regions, and it actually prompted the president to issue an executive order number 3.
And this activity initially, of course, was to provide energy to the locals. But today, as we speak, it has, the big of town, very influential people that have turned it into a business.
Yes, it turns out to be a business because ideally we have no reliable alternative. And that's what we have been crying for. While we are saying charcoal is now very destructive, it is destroying our trees quite quickly, we cannot quickly switch off from charcoal. The only issues now we are saying is, can we sustainably produce charcoal? Can we increase the productivity? Okay. Because statistics that we've done show that actually we are not maximizing charcoal production. When we go to produce, a lot of it is turned into waste. So we can be able to sustainably produce charcoal, but also address issues of alternatives. Priscilla, 60% of the charcoal that is produced in this country is consumed in urban centers and cities. And these urban centers and cities, where you and I stay, have connection to electricity. But this electricity is not affordable. Imagine if electricity was reliable and affordable, and you cut off the 60% of the population in these urban centers using charcoal, then you will have completely saved the cutting of trees for charcoal. The people we have in the villages, especially in my village, very few use charcoal. They use firewood, and firewood is not as destructive as burning charcoal. So let's work while we are doing this to promote sustainable production of charcoal. Let us also look at alternatives so that we are able to address the energy needs of the country.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Let's talk about those alternatives. What would be the alternatives that can be adopted right from government level down to community level in order to save our tree cover?
At the government, I would say at the urban level or town level, there are two that we could be focusing on. Use of electricity, which now we are producing enough electricity. We just need a subsidy in terms of the tariffs to be able to promote electricity for cooking and boiling, to address the bigger number of people in Kampala. Then two, in urban centers that is possible is use of gas, LPG. And we've been advocating, if we can waive the tax on the LPG gas, people can be able to afford these cylinders and resort to gas and forget about charcoal. Then, of course, big institutions like schools, prisons, name them. Those ones now go into briquettes. We are struggling with garbage. All of this garbage can be converted into briquettes, and then we get the energy that we require, and then reduce on the charcoal. As you go down to the communities where we are saying use of firewood is not a bigger problem, but we know they can also do biogas. Most of the communities in this country are now keeping animals. They can use biogas to be able to have that clean energy that would be useful for supporting their energy requirements.
Okay, so these, alternatives, and ideally these would be recommendations that you as an authority have in line with other stakeholders and engagements with other stakeholders. What has been the response, however, of the other stakeholders to enable this become a reality in terms of implementation?
Yeah, there are engagements at various levels, and I think if you have been monitoring, you see that from Ministry of Energy we are getting information that now if you are going to cook using electricity, there is really subsidy that is being provided. It is not yet well structured, but I think it is a positive move in the right direction. Gas, the population, even with the cost of gas, now compared to the cost of charcoal, people are now transitioning, because a bag of charcoal now at 100,000, one would look at how much charcoal do I need to move a month, and the gas would be now the best substitute. But still it puts the cost of living high. So we are keeping engaging with the Ministry of Energy. We have also engaged with the Ministry of Finance for purposes of looking into this so that we can be able to save our forests from all angles.
Okay. Yeah. Also in recent past, we have seen the authority complaining about creation of illegal land titles in central forest reserves. How is this affecting the operations that you have ongoing, and is there any strategy to bring an end to this?
Yeah, the creation of illegal titles in forest reserves is really undermining our efforts and you know, bringing an unnecessary cost that we are going through into cancelling them that would be actually utilized in supporting population to possibly have more seedlings to plant. So the illegal titles are really a problem, and we are strongly engaging with the Ministry of Lands to be able to address these creation of titles. But for the meantime now we are focusing on cancelling those that we are finding in forest reserves. But with our engagement, we are happy that the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Lands, has made a statement to all the registrars that no one should register a title within the forest reserves. And if that is done, then the registrar will take personal responsibility. But on top of that as well, we are also working with the Ministry of Lands to be able to have all our forest boundaries digitized and input in the land management information system so that we are able to cut off any attempts of creation of titles by that system. So we are trying to engage and strongly work together and see that we put this off, but it's still a problem. Because every now and then, if you look at 90% of the court cases that we are having as NFA, they are court cases related to land. People come and claim, this is my land, you cannot block me. We go to court. At times there are injunctions against us, and people now go in, forests are cut. So it is a very, very big challenge that we call on all the stakeholders to get involved in and support us. This environment we are talking about is not for NFA. It is for all of us. So we are also asking the judicial officers to be activists so that we save the forests and then ownership questions are sorted later. Because we are all affected in equal measure.
Okay. It still begs the question, are there at least, even if it's a small stride, that has been taken in a positive direction on that very same subject matter of illegal land titles?
Yeah, last financial we successfully cancelled 204 titles, working with the Ministry of Lands. Last month we submitted 609 titles. We are now undergoing public hearings conducted by Ministry of Lands. We are optimistic that all of these will be cancelled because we've seen and have been verified to be within the Central Forest Reserves, so that we really make it as well risky for someone to acquire the titles. But we have also informed financial institutions, because some individuals go and acquire titles and then go and use them as mortgage in banks and get money. So we have alerted and warned financial institutions not to pick those freehold titles that are being created now without first verifying them with us. And especially in the 8 districts of Uganda. All the freeholds that are coming up, I would say that 90%, or if not 99%, they are being created on forest reserves or wetlands. So banks, please take note of that. Do not give credit based on a mortgage or the title before checking with us.
Okay. All right. That being said, also, if I'm having an illegal title to a land, especially for around the Central Forest Reserve, then that means whatever I'm doing on that land is equally illegal, right? In principle. Also bring it into light with the illegal timber logging that we're having within the Central Forest Reserves. How are you doing monitoring over such?
Yeah, we do try to do monitoring. Of course, working with the security agencies, Environmental Police Force and UPDF, to be able to at times mount roadblocks. But the most effective one that is helping us is foot patrols into the forest to be able to save trees from falling down. Because our interest is not really to impound and arrest timber. It is to keep the trees standing. So we are trying our best to be more in the forest than before, to be able to ensure that we deter the illegal loggers from putting down our trees. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Then you mentioned something called integrated forest management. Elaborate to us how that works.
Integrated land management system.
Land management, okay. Yeah,
integrated land management system is a system that is with the Ministry of Lands that they are using now for land management. So that now all the, like you're seeing titles now being done so fast. Because of the systems they have now, they are able to input things and quickly get the product. So this integrated land management system now has all the lands of this country, including the forests, by the way. I would tell you that even before we digitize and put in the digitized boundaries of the forest, Ministry of Lands is able to see that these forests are there because they are part of land of government and they are the authority on land. So what it does now is that once we digitize and input our digitized boundaries, we want to make that area restricted so that no activity can take place involving updates, involving delineation, involving creation of any title.
Okay.
Yes.
In closing remarks, what's your call to action to the public, but as well as to government?
The public is that we are calling upon you to join NFA in a bid to conserve the environment, because you've seen that every one of us is affected directly. The seasons that we knew are no longer there. The rains are now erratic and unpredictable. The temperatures have increased. So we need to start doing something at household level, planting trees at household level, growing them, and also addressing our energy needs. And NFA has been giving out seedlings to public to be able to plant, and we've been promoting bamboo that actually grows much faster so that people can get poles, can get firewood to be able to do this. Okay. Government is increasing the investment in this area because we cannot attain sustainable development unless conservation efforts are doubled.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Stuart, and your stewardship towards the National Forest Authority in ensuring that at least the forest cover, or what is remaining of it, is preserved and utilized effectively. That brings us to the end of this conversation. Digital products taking center stage, and banks redefining themselves in order to serve the market niche. Do stay with us as that conversation is coming up.